You've obviously been very busy now.
Yeah, we have. I think what was evident to us is that in the past, maybe the odd signings have leaked out and hasn't really had the impact that we felt this has in terms of the message it sends out to everybody. There's a core group of players here who, most of them have developed very quickly over the last couple of years, have still got a lot of development left in them, and will become the bedrock really of this Scarlets team moving forward. And of course around this we still have a lot of our experienced players who are going to remain within the squad. People like Matthew Rees, Stephen Jones, Sean Lamont, John Davis, and all these players are still in the squad. But this announcement really underpins the ethos of this development that we've had within. Virtually all Welsh qualified players here, all names now just about that people recognise, and you'll see as well that there are a number of development contracts within that, which again will be our next tranche, if you like, of core players that will represent the Scarlet.
All Welsh, that must be very rare.
Possibly, I think it's something that we've committed to. I think what's rare is the quality of the Welsh talent that we have on show here. To name 21 players of this quality who are virtually all Welsh and have come through our system or have been developed in our system is very pleasing for us.
Ben Morgan is the only one that is obviously very interested. He's obviously made a commitment now, then, is he?
Yeah, we're having negotiations on this constantly. Ben is pretty much focused on becoming Welsh qualified. He knows that will happen within a year, and he probably realises that his opportunities will be within Wales.
How did you manage to keep some of these guys nice? Because obviously Stoller was linked with a move to England. George North would have gone to anywhere, I suppose. And the fact that they stayed for you is a huge boost, isn't it?
I think it's great for the region, that they've committed themselves to this. We were under a lot of pressure with a lot of these players externally. A lot of these guys had made names for themselves. I think it's important when you look at some of the standout names there that we realise that they're not only excellent players in their own right, but they're names now that people actually recognise, and as a result of that it put us under a lot of pressure. But more importantly, it starts to raise the profile of our team, and that's been important, and we've probably struggled there over the last 3 or 4 years to bring through these names. But when you look at that list, there's some very exciting names there.
Some of them obviously stayed for less money than they could have got somewhere else, I would imagine. That sort of commitment to this place, I would think.
I'd like to think so. I think it's over the last season in particular, it's been a great environment here with a relatively young group of coaches working with these guys as well. There's been a lot of energy around the place, and I think virtually everybody who's been in the environment has improved as players, which is important. Because they're Welsh qualified, because they all have ambitions to go to World Cups and play in Six Nations, they realise as well that the best place for them to be is within Wales, and if they can do that within the region like the Scarlets, where they're obviously all enjoying their rugby and developing as rugby players, then it's a good place for them to be. And that was definitely been part of the attraction for all of these players.
Was there interest in George?
Yes, there was interest in virtually all these players. You take somebody who's probably slipped through the net a little bit in Steve Shingle. He had one game for us, and there was a lot of interest in him as a result of that. Fortunately for us in that position, we have a number of players coming through the system, so we were able to cover that.
But in terms of obviously the season he's had, that the year against the Springboks and everything else, to keep him here, and it's a huge statement of intent from you.
It's huge, and he was one of these development players last year. He had a development contract. And he's chosen to commit to us for a long period of time, which we're delighted with, and it shows his faith in us, and obviously our faith and support for him.
I know it doesn't say that, Nigel. Is it 2 or 3 years, George? Are you able to say?
We're not. It's all either between 2 and 3 years, but George would be the top end of that.
Let's just get some clarification here, because we've got some names that are on the list, and it's obviously the question is to ask what's happened with Simon Gardner and Lou Reed, Dominic Dane, Johnny F, Gareth Davis, Dan Evans,
But the majority of them are still on contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just an announcement of re-signings. It's nothing to do with this is the squad for next year. This is the guys who have committed. So virtually all those guys are on longer-term contracts anyway, and they'll be the next tranche of announcers that we probably make it this time next year. So all those guys are still part of our squad.
Okay. The fact that you signed so many young Welsh players, what do you think it says to other young Welsh players? Because that would be key in terms of, in the past, the ability to attract young Welsh talent has always been key.
I think anybody who plays their rugby within the Scarlet region can see a very clear pathway to actually become a professional rugby player if that's their ambition. I think that's what it says first and foremost. There's a lot of work in the community in actually generating the interest in the first place. There's a lot of hard work that goes on in all the clubs in the region to evolve those players, and what they can now see is that there's absolutely a clear pathway that if they are of a standard and a level, they can become professional rugby players, particularly with our focus and emphasis on developing from within our own region. We believe that it's always been a strength of ours historically, if you look back, maybe not so in the more recent history, but certainly over the last couple of seasons it has been, and we've gone back to our roots really in that context. What I would say as well though is that what we've done particularly well, I think, with people like Ben Morgan, is identify potential outside of our region that we can bring in and in our environment, develop them to come through as quality professional rugby players. And Ben, I think, is an excellent example of that, as is probably Fenby, Damien Welch.
Do you look outside the squad as well, Nigel, in terms of obviously you've got your hands tied in the last couple of years in terms of recruitment, but is that something looking forward to next season as well?
Well, this is a major announcement in its own right, because it's holding on to a lot of the talent that we see as the core of the group moving forward. There are still other negotiations going on with maybe some other players who are currently within the squad, and obviously we're looking at what, if anything, we can do from outside of the group. What we would like to do is add some experience in certain positions, but it's not easy out there. We're working within a defined budget. Actually re-signing some of these players has not been cheaper. It's cost us a little bit of money as well, but we had to prioritise something. And for me, the priority has been about ensuring that this core of players remain Scarlets for the next couple of seasons at least, because they have got that much development in them again. This team will only grow. These players will only get better. They're not going to get worse. They're going to get better, and as a result, the team will get better. And by securing their future, we can be confident of that moving forward.
What do you think this group of players could do for the Scarlets over the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, if you look at some of these names and how quickly they've come over the last couple of years, if they can maintain that progress, who knows? I think in the Magners League this year, we're still in it. We're sixth, unfortunately, but there's been about 3 or 4 games that we've just got away from us because we've lacked maybe a little bit of composure and experience at key times. What I hope the next couple of years does for these players in particular is allows them to evolve and develop that experience and composure at key moments, which will ensure that those tight games that got away from us this year don't longer do that. We've already improved considerably from last season in terms of our performances, and as I say, I expect more growth from this group over the next couple of seasons as well.
Mark Davis said something really interesting. He talks about obviously what you've done in terms of managing the squad, etc. How important is Gareth anything in terms of identifying the likes of Ben Morgan, Damien Welsh, any kind of young players that you've got involved?
Well, we've got a very strong network, of people that help us in that as well. It's Gareth manages that side of things, but there's a lot of people involved in the process. Anthony Buchanan again is somebody who's quite central to that. He does a heck of a lot of work with the RFC. Our partners in Findumbree and Carmarthen are very important in that, and we look to place a lot of these development players will actually be placed with our Premiership partners early in the early part of next season for their own development, because a lot of these guys haven't played senior rugby yet, haven't played much senior rugby, so they need to get that grounding, and our relationships with our Premiership clubs are vital there. So Gareth manages a lot of that side of things, and underneath Gareth, he manages a lot of very good people who are out there working on our behalf.
to Ulster, right? You sort of described it as a cup final. Who have you got available performance wise for that? Is it Dave Lyons back?
Dave Lyons will be available. George North is the question mark over, and we'll find out probably tomorrow. He'll be tested tomorrow to see whether he's fit to play. Sean Lamont possibly available as well. Apart from that, everybody who played and was in the match 23 on Sunday is available.
What kind of challenge is that Ulster? Because they're probably the form team at the moment.
Well, it's a real good challenge, you know. I think they've brought in like a little bit. You know, they are a good side. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt they're a good team and they'll have a lot of confidence. But that's all that we can do is focus on ourselves. If I'm honest, probably Sunday wasn't a bad thing for us because there was so much inaccuracy in our game that it was hugely disappointing. But the players know that. And you know, we came away with a win at the end of the day against a side that we certainly don't underestimate, Treviso. You know, they're a very big physical team and they've got a certain amount of quality in their ranks as well. So we came away with a win, which was all important. If we'd have had the bonus point, it would have been great, but we'd have still have had to go to Ulster and win the match regardless. And you know, we knew that these two games are vitally important. So it's a huge challenge for us. It's a real kick up the backside. You know, nobody really, apart from one or two players, did themselves any justice on Sunday. They know they've all got to step it up. A lot of our returning internationals were very enthused about coming back and playing the style of rugby that we want to play. We just weren't accurate enough, and it's all very well wanting to do that, but we have to know when to do it, how to do it, and we have to bring that accuracy, and we just weren't accurate enough. And you know, we've been very hard on each other today. It's the first day back, so as I say, it probably wasn't a bad thing. And we know we've got to pick the levels up by at least 3 or 4 notches. I'm sure they will be.
Key area of the game for you? Key area of the game?
8
against
years
Ulster, yeah.
against Ulster. Normally the conditions have a bearing on proceedings out there, and you know, just looking at the long-term weather forecast, it doesn't look much different to it normally looks. You know, rain and blustery. Key area against them here was our line-out in particular, where we failed miserably against them, and we've got to get that right. You know, they'll fancy their chances there again. You know, they've come at us in that area. We have to secure our own possession, and if we can do that, you know, we'll have a game that we can build on. I think your kicking game is very important, and the contact area when you play the Irish teams is always a key area. And you know, that's the trouble that we've got when we look at our turnover rate, which was 50% against Treviso. We know that we're at our best when we get our turnover rate down to the mid-20s. And that's what we've got to target. That's always the danger for us because of the style of rugby we play, because of the intent to play. If we can get our turnover rate in the 20s, then we normally, well, just about every time we win matches.
Dragons suffered a similar heartache to you because of recruitment, which you were all in the threat there. But one thing they did very well in the game they probably should have won was they absolutely battered Ulster at the contact area. You positive you got guys who could do the same type of thing, because then they allowed them to play. Really.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the contact area is always important against the Irish teams. I think we played well against the Irish teams this year, you know, and we realise that is the key area of the game. Refereeing is always going to be important. And how the referee views that area, because it can be frustrating, but we can only do what we can do and control what we can control. One of the things we've got to do as a back line is that, yeah, it's great to play an open, expansive style of rugby, but we've got to do some of the dirty stuff as well, and we expect our backs to be equally efficient in the contact area as our forwards, and they have to be in order for us to get anything out of Friday's game.
And Mark, you know, I think that would be the feeling with some influence he's had the last few weeks.
Yeah, he's had a massive influence, hasn't he, on the results. He's a key player. He probably touches the ball more than anybody else in their team, and has a hugely positive effect and influence when he does that. He has some big moments on top of that. So, you know, he's a danger. But I think they're more than that. You know, they're able to stay in games. and they've done that particularly well. And when they do stay in games, to have then somebody like Ropina to actually take those opportunities that present themselves has been key for them. They made some very good signings, I think, in the off-season, in securing some of the South African players, and it's paid dividends for them, particularly in this period around the Six Nations.